Welcome to Shaping Healthcare, a podcast by CitiusTech. Some of the great minds in the world are constantly striving to solve the healthcare industry's greatest challenges with technology, creativity, and agility. With every episode of the Shaping Healthcare podcast, we will take you deeper into the world of healthcare and life sciences and give you a perspective into what it takes to build a human-first, technologically enabled healthcare world. I'm your host, Laurel Rockall.
Today, we are honored to welcome Vipin Varma, a distinguished leader in cybersecurity with a remarkable career spanning over 28 years. Currently serving as the Senior Vice President and Head of Cybersecurity Practice at CitiusTech, Vipin brings a wealth of experience in safeguarding critical information and steering cybersecurity strategies across diverse sectors. With a robust background that includes pivotal roles in both corporate giants like TCS and a distinguished tenure in the Indian Army, Vipin has forged a path marked by excellence in risk management and security governance. His leadership in navigating complex cybersecurity landscapes, particularly in the healthcare sector, underscores his commitment to ensuring data integrity and privacy in an era of rapid technological advancement. Throughout his career, Vipin has been instrumental in shaping the cybersecurity posture of organizations, leveraging his expertise to protect against evolving threats and vulnerabilities. His insights into the intersection of cybersecurity and healthcare technology amidst the rise of AI and interconnected systems provide invaluable perspectives for healthcare leaders and cybersecurity professionals alike. Today, we dive into the critical strategies and challenges facing healthcare enterprises in maintaining cybersecurity resilience in the GenAI era. Vipin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Laurel.
Very happy to have you. And what a career that you've had. It spans significant roles in cybersecurity across both corporate and military sectors. How have your experiences in the Indian Army influenced your approach to managing cybersecurity challenges in healthcare today?
That's a great question. And firstly, thanks for having me on the podcast. And it's great being here. Great to be able to reach out to our fraternity. I had a large or a long career in the Indian Army. And large is by terms of the types of things I did, and long is by the breadth and the length of the number of years I spent. As a lot of your viewers would know, the military is the first line of defense normally, and you always think in terms of security. And as the militaries rolled out cyber systems or any IoT systems, cybersecurity was always paramount in the mind. The other thing, of course, is that one of the key frontiers that you guard today in any military is the cyber frontier of your country too. So in that sense too, cybersecurity does come into play. I still remember it was, I think, towards the end of 90s, where I got into an appointment where we were starting cybersecurity for the first time. I'll not say the first time, but about the first time in our organization. And that's the time we were put to the test to say that, look, you got to start cybersecurity from scratch and learn what it is. And that's my introduction, and that's where I've grown from. Been a large number of years from then.
Wow. That's amazing. Yes. I mean, military cybersecurity, then into, corporate giant like Tata Consultancy Services, and then now into healthcare and the healthcare sector and your current role at CitiusTech. What strategic shifts have you observed in how healthcare organizations perceive and prioritize their cybersecurity amidst this age of Gen AI and these AI technologies?
Right. I think one major, if I can say, recognition globally has been that your critical assets at a national level, let me say, are not just some of, the big things that we used to think of earlier, but a lot of your systems which are managed sometimes by the private industry are part of your critical infrastructure. So you, have things like your energy, your roadways and all that, those come into prominence normally. But in the last few years, the focus on healthcare and the impact it has on the population has shown that this is one of the sectors which is a very important part of the critical infrastructure of any country for that matter. And therefore, I see a lot of bad actors having turned their focus to the healthcare sector. And this has come about in the recent months and the last couple of years especially. And we see a lot of high-profile attacks. People know that the impact of these attacks is going to be high. People also know that the the returns, of whatever way they are looking at the returns is also likely to be high. Whether it is ransomware, whether it is impact to the delay. The last few attacks have actually, and this is a sector where it directly has an impact on not just, a virtual commodity. It has impact on people's well-being and lives. So in that sense, cybersecurity has become a very important facet of the healthcare sector. And this is well recognized by most healthcare leaders today. The investments are there. The focus is there. It's not just from a point of view of the organizations. There is a lot of focus on it from the regulatory bodies, from the government, who would want to make sure that this aspect of the critical infrastructure is well protected. So I think that is from a perspective of people focusing on it. But a lot is, of course, being done. We'll talk through the course of our discussion as to what people are doing, how they're doing, and what are some of the things they need to do as we go forward from here.
Absolutely. It's critical and definitely at the forefront. And anyone I've spoken to in healthcare technology, that is always something that's very present in their minds is that safety and security and the information and staying on top of that. And especially with this rapid advancement of AI and machine learning, how do you see cybersecurity evolving to mitigate these risks that you're talking about as they emerge with AI-powered healthcare?
Excellent. That's a great question because, see, AI has come into our lives and I'll not say insidiously, but it has come in over a period of time now. But there has been in the last few years a marked change in the kind of things AI can do. And especially with GenAI now coming in, you find that AI can do very much more than what it could do just a few years back, right? I remember we used to talk about, learning models and various things. But with the large learning models coming into play now, AI can do very much more. And especially if you look at the healthcare industry, where there is so much of patient information, direct information, there is information which is in multi-modal format. It is something which is, tailor-made for AI-based solutions. Because the kind of data crunching that AI can do, and not just on textual information, it is on information in multiple, modes, multiple types of data, media, whether it is in terms of imaging that you produce, the kind of insights that AI can bring in is tremendous. So therefore, from a healthcare perspective overall, and whether it be from the healthcare imaging or the healthcare medical technology, or also of the hospital systems and the care system, the providers, both of them are now looking at AI and AI-based analytics and various other tools to be able to give them that additional benefit of looking after the patients and looking after patients better.
Mm-hmm. And certainly with your vast experience across different sectors here, what are some key cybersecurity challenges that are specific in healthcare as they're adopting these technologies? And how should these organizations prioritize their defenses against those challenges?
Now, again, firstly, of course, any new technology brings in new challenges, right? And as there are people to use technology, there are people to kind of misuse technology and kind of find the loopholes which gives them that edge to do their whatever nefarious things they're looking to do. The same with AI for that matter. Now, one of the things, of course, we must disabuse ourselves of is that AI is not some kind of a voodoo or a magic tool that has come out, right? It's while a lot of people may not understand exactly how a LLM works, how an LLM is to be put to use follows our standard principles which we'll be using so far, how the application should be created, how they should be integrated with upstream, downstream applications and the data. That is well known, right? So from a cybersecurity perspective, we always don't talk in terms of not having or having cybersecurity and not having cybersecurity. You always talk in terms of risk, saying that, okay, this is what we should do and this will reduce risk. And we are trying to reduce risk so that it brings it down to acceptable levels, right? So the whole exercise is to try to identify what threats could be from various types of, sources of threats and look for measures to mitigate against those threats and therefore be able to look at your risk picture, residual risk, and say that is it acceptable to me now? And also, do I have measures in place to be able to recover or, be resilient against whatever risk is relevant to be there? Now, looking at it from an AI angle, the first is how do I strategize and the deployment or the use of AI within my organization, right? There are organizations now coming up, a lot of our standards and the, if I can say, regulatory bodies are coming up with the right kind of frameworks to use to be able to determine what kind of risk does the application, particular type of application pose to you. What is it that you could do to potentially protect against them? So let me take some common ones. There is the risk of misuse by people who are not authorized to view certain data. So if I ingest critical what we call PII, the personally identified information, and I have ingested that into my AI, obviously the output of the AI is going to contain some of the data which might be critical in nature and should not be exposed. So therefore, I need to make sure that if I am ingesting data for a particular purpose, then the usage of the output that I get has to be commensurate, and the controls on the usage of that output that the AI model is giving us or the application is giving us goes through the same controls as would for a non-AI application. Right. So I need to have people with the right access. I need to have the access control in place. I need to have the protection of data. What the output that is being given, I need to make sure that that output is also handled and stored in a way that meets the security requirements. So that is one part of it. The second is I need to make sure that the AI model itself is protected, and we don't have a situation where the model itself gets corrupted. So you have situations now where you would like to make sure that your model is not, you don't write into a model. It's something which is a read only, or you're only using it to generate and you're not kind of writing back into it. So I'm just trying to, I don't want to, this is not a tutorial, so therefore I don't want to go down to great level of detail. But the point really is that there are enough measures to be able to, or enough frameworks to be able to identify risk, and also to be able to identify the controls that you need to be placed to mitigate that risk or to be able to manage that risk, and therefore come to a final posture where I find that the risk is acceptable to me. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yes, goodness, as you mentioned, that healthcare, that privacy of the data is paramount, and there are these regulatory bodies like HIPAA, and they have the requirements. And when, just to build on that a little bit further, how do healthcare organizations effectively balance, I should say, the benefits of these AI-driven insights with the need to be able to maintain that patient confidentiality and keep that data privacy paramount?
Right. So one aspect which I often tell people outside our industry about the data and the criticality of the data in healthcare is that even if you take financial information or any other type of information which is stored by other industries, that is information that, let's say you have a password can be changed. You have a number, or account number, an account number can be changed. But I can't change my medical records, right? My basic medical information, etc., cannot be changed. So my point being that we therefore have a lot of data, which is fairly important. And like you said, there are regulations like HIPAA, which make sure that we need to guard that data properly. There is also a lot of requirements from privacy, and increasingly privacy earlier it was only more in Europe. Now with CCPA and a lot of other regulations coming into the US also, increasingly privacy is becoming important to patient privacy and keeping patients confidential information private from that aspect. So that's from a requirement perspective and trying to make sure that is done. Now, from a framework perspective and trying to make sure that you have the right, measures in place, HIPAA, like you said yourself, lays down certain standards by which to govern data and release data. Who all can have access to it? Whom can I potentially give that data to or make that data available to? How do I protect that data when it is under storage and under movement? Now, those are measures which a lot of the standards, you have HIPAA as a regulation, you have NIST, which is the federal body which has laid down given its regulations. There are industry bodies like OAS, like iTrust, which are also coming up with specific measures with which to protect data, protect the AI systems, protect all other systems. So we are therefore into the process of, or I'll say the whole part of cybersecurity is to look at what is applicable to you. What is the kind of protection that I need to provide? and to be able to select the appropriate controls that provide me the level of assurance that I need.
Mhm. And you mentioned earlier how healthcare has now become, maybe like a new front or new focus of healthcare, or sorry, of cybersecurity threat and the vulnerabilities. So as healthcare systems, with this important information that doesn't change, as you mentioned, as this becomes increasingly interconnected and reliant on AI and new technology, what strategies do you recommend to ensure resilience against these cyber threats that exploit these vulnerabilities across these interconnected
I think
platforms?
you touched upon one very important aspect of the healthcare, I'll say the ecosystem, which is there in other industries, may not be as much, which is that here there is a lot more interconnectivity at play. So you have the peers are connected, and these are all system connections, right? So there are all interconnected system between the peers, the providers, the health systems, between the technology companies and the equipment and the various products that they're developing, and the life science companies, the pharma companies which are doing drug development, clinical trials, etc. All of this is a very interconnected ecosystem, right? So the first part is we have to recognize that and kind of plan for that. That's one thing. The second question, I think the main question that you asked is, how do we want to make sure that we are able to go forward from here? Is that the question?
I guess, what do you recommend in your experience in terms of how do we ensure that resistance against these sorts of threats?
Correct. The resilience to threats, etc. So the resilience to threats comes in two methods, and I'll say two basic measures. One is what you call your ability to plan, anticipate, and put your protective measures in place to be able to make sure that the threat is never able to manifest itself or become, kind of impact your systems, right? So that's one part of the resilience that you put in place. And it's what we call defense in depth. So you want to make sure that there is enough controls that are, walls that you put between the attacker and your crown jewels, your data, so that it's not just one thing that falls down. So you go over multiple gates to arrive at what are your crown jewels. That's one part of it. So I put effective protective measures in place. The second thing I do is to make sure that there is enough monitoring and enough, if I can say, the detection capability available to detect the presence of any attacker or any threat in my system, right? So the moment it is manifesting itself, the earlier I catch it, the better, and the better is the remediation, or the better is the containment. So I contain the threat. So let's say I don't allow it to spread too much, so the impact is minimized, right? So the ability to detect and detect quickly is one of the critical things that come from there. So that is one part of the response part. The second part is that if something is happened, and if I have an impact to a system, or let's say my entire company, I need to be able to recover from that fast. So the other part of resilience is to make sure that I am able to have my right backups. I have the confidence in the backups that I have created, and I am quickly being able to identify the right backup to recover from and be able to quickly recover that. So all of this is part of your, I will say, overall resilience plan, and testing this out where you are able to make sure that is my protective measures enough? Do I need some additional protective control in place? Is there some gap that I have? On the other side, am I being able to monitor properly, detect properly? And if something happens, will I be able to recover properly? That's the chain of, I will say, resilience overall. And you making sure that each piece is in place.
Right. Yes. I'm visualizing like a wall and sentries.
Exactly.
Cages, container, yeah.
So I should have given that analogy, right? So you have the moat and the castle wall in place. You have the gate, but you also have the sentry, and you have the guys standing on the towers with their boards in place so that people can't come in. And then you have the citadel keep, because you want to make sure even if the gate falls, there is a keep where, you can still keep safe. And outside you have some army waiting to come and expel the guys if they do come in. That's a good analogy.
Perfect. Yeah, as we've been talking so far, something that's come to mind are devices, both personal, like wearable devices, just even the equipment and machinery and the devices that are used in healthcare and hospitals. And What strategies should healthcare IT leaders use in order to secure these endpoints and this other data that is coming in from these devices?
That's, I think, a very, very timely question, because that's the next step. When I started talking about where do we need to go? So let me give you a certain parallel from other industries, right? If you take the utilities, the power sector, generation and distribution of power, or you take vehicles, they face this problem a little earlier, because in the manufacturing sector or in the power sector, all their controllers, etc., were already connected into automated systems. And if anyone was able to control those automated systems, potentially they could impact the power generation, power distribution, or the manufacturing lines, etc. The other thing that came up there was as cars started getting connected into the internet, and you had the entertainment systems, and you had a lot of control taking place directly from the manufacturer into the car, there was also the potential of impacting a car. So there were recorded cases, I remember a few years back, people used to talk about hacking a car and causing it to crash by making sure that the brakes don't apply. Those kind of things were going on. Now we are coming to a new horizon. And when you take devices, essentially there are of two types. And maybe people are going to fight over it, but I take these devices as two types. There are the devices which are the larger imaging or larger systems which are used in hospitals. They are used in the pharma, companies for drug development, etc., and all that. There is a set of measures that go in there, no doubt. But the larger space that is opening up, and to the point I think you were also making, is there's a lot of personal health devices that are now coming up. You have your cardiac monitors, you have ICDs, you have, everyone today is roaming around with some kind of a medical device, right? And while the device is mostly, read-only right now, that means you're reading some parameter and transmitting it. Even that's vital information. But more and more, you're going to come to devices which are going to be like your insulin pumps. You are going to have other, controlled release medicines where, you are going to be able to release the medicine on requirement and things like that, where the connectivity to the internet and misuse of the connectivity to the internet could potentially harm the safety of the individual who's wearing the device. So that is the place where the requirement of cybersecurity, or securing the connectivity and securing the way the device is operating, becomes that much more important. And that is where there is a lot of work by the FDA, by other agencies, trying to figure out what is the basic security stack that we need to put. But regulations aside, since it's so critical and it is actually personal security, and safety here, most of the device manufacturers, or the various medtech companies, are taking this aspect very seriously, and they are looking to see as to how they can firstly design the applications or the software which is going onto the device well. How is it designed to be trusted, and you are able to make sure that it operates the way it is expected to. You are trying to make sure that the data it collects is protected, both at the place where it is connected and where it is aggregated. And you're also trying to make sure that you are continuously being able to keep track and monitor how it is performing, so that you are able to take the measures to, if you find anything going wrong. So this is something which is increasingly now going to come into prominence. And what you call the IoMT, the Internet of Medical Things, that is going to become a reality, and the cybersecurity of the IoMT is going to become a reality as you go forward.
Thank you for addressing that. Yeah, as you say, it is very timely, because I feel like I have been hearing more about like insulin pumps, for example, and how that, how those are being used and will be used. And so thank you for addressing that. It'll be interesting to see how that works going forward.
Good.
Yeah. And, we spoke earlier about AI algorithms, and the information that you're putting in is, it depends on your result, right? Whatever you put in is what's going to be telling it later. And so these algorithms are heavily depending on the quality and the availability of data. How can healthcare organizations enhance their data governance practices to safeguard against these cyber threats that aim to manipulate that sort of information and those healthcare decisions?
Correct. So now this is where the boundary between the application on one end and the cybersecurity and all of this becomes a little blurred. I'll tell you why. Because when you talk in terms of AI, and the way that this information is, the data is crunched and the output is consumed. It is fed into something which takes some action with the data, right? Could be a human, could be a machine, and all that. There are 2, 3 aspects that come into play. One is that you want to make sure that the data that is getting in is representative. There is no bias in the data that goes in, because that will lead to output bias. Right? Now, this is not purely cybersecurity. This is from a quality and trust perspective too. Right? That's why I'm saying it's the cusp of how an application is to be put together. You will take the ethical point of view. You will take the quality point of view. You taking the security point of view together. And what we have done in our company is to create a quality and trust framework. And therefore, you address these 3 or 4 things in one at the same time. You say that, look, I need to make sure that I protect the way that the data is used, or the output that is coming from the data is used, in terms of who can use it, how it can be used, and all that. The second is that when the data comes out, the way it is consumed, I want to make sure that I do some validation, and I can do a continuous set of validation of the output of my large language model to make sure no bias has crept in, to make sure no errors are creeping in. I'm able to detect errors if they start coming up, because otherwise it just becomes something that you are just consuming directly without validating. So you want to make sure that you validate it. The third is you want to make sure that you design the system in a way that there are checks and balances for all of these in place. So you don't have, something coming in, something going on and directly being consumed. So you put the checks and balances for all of these things in place. The checks and balances are, of course, from it could be another AI system working, trying to see the quality of data. It could be the way that the architecture is designed to make sure that there is no straight through going through. There are human interventions, or there are quality control points, security control points that are being put in place. So all of this is something that is getting more and more formalized as to how that the system will be designed from an architecture perspective, from the principle of design perspective, from the way that framework is to run together. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. And if I may build on that a little bit, as you mentioned, these frameworks, how do you see these cybersecurity frameworks evolving in this new era, like over time, as the dynamic nature of these technologies? How do you see that evolving over time?
Right. So like I was telling you earlier, we came up with our own trust and trust framework, quality framework. And like I said, all of these have to be looked at together. You will not be able to look at separately. But from a cybersecurity perspective, we have various bodies that are coming up with recommendations. Like I talked earlier, NIST is a federal body that has come up with what they call their model. There is another industry body called OS. OS has come up with, that is an open web project, basically for application security. But they have come up with their top 10 risks and their controls or the mitigation for AI security. Similarly, you have another body called MITRE, which has come up with something they call Atlas, and I'm just giving you some names. There are many more. Lot of the standardization bodies, a lot of the industry best practices bodies are gathering information from the practitioners and trying to create a kind of framework of all these recommendations, so that at the time when you're designing, or at the time you're kind of implementing an AI system or an AI application, you are able to see what is applicable for me and what all should I be looking at, what are the kind of risks that could potentially come in, and I'm able to then select the right measures to put in place in my design.
Just to shift gears just a little bit, our focus for a moment, I feel like during COVID, supply chains, across different sectors, that was always a thing you'd hear. Oh, supply chains are, there's disruption, things are slow. Healthcare supply chains, they're becoming increasingly digital and interconnected. And so yet another thing in healthcare, it's coming interconnected here. And so for you, what measures should healthcare enterprises implement in order to secure that supply chain?
Right. So that's a great question. And I call it a great question because it's actually in two parts. I'll tell you why I'm saying that. When you say supply chain, what first comes to the mind of all of us is a physical supply chain. So you have goods, medicines, devices, all of them coming from a manufacturer, coming to people or to the health system or to the hospitals and getting deployed, right? That's a physical supply chain that I think of. And we all saw the impact on COVID, during COVID. If you remember, the first a couple of months, we were all roaming around looking for hand washes. And I'm saying it could be simple and stupid as that. But even masks, if you remember at that time, and surgical gowns, and these are very, very simple things. The need and the importance was felt to make sure that there is a supply chain view that we are able to create and we are able to manage at that level. But the second and equally important part of the supply chain is what we call the software supply chain. And what I mean by that is that in when you are creating a software system, you don't write all the code from scratch. You are taking libraries, or you're taking applications from open sources, from third-party vendors. You're integrating that and creating the application that you're looking for, right? The second thing that you're doing is a lot of the data and a lot of the downstream inputs and information comes from other systems too. So what, let's say for a hospital or for any healthcare organization, their application, there is a large supply chain of vendors. And if I can say the goods, in this case, the software itself, which is aggregating to create the application that I'm using. And one of the critical things that most cybersecurity leaders have realized is to be able to get a better understanding of the component that I am using. We call it software component analysis, or a SBOM, secure bill of material. So we make sure that whatever is being used for a critical application, especially, comes from sources that I can actually monitor and I am confident about, and that is something which is key to making sure that it firstly produces the desired results, does so consistently, and it will be able to be something that I am able to control, the impact and effect of that I am able to control.
Yes. Vipin, AI technologies, they promise to, in healthcare, they promise to revolutionize patient care, make the practitioner's job easier, have a great toolkit, to help with their care and the management of systems, all these things through personalized medicine, predictive analytics. So when we're looking at that from a cybersecurity standpoint, what are some really critical considerations in order to prevent unauthorized access and then manipulation of this sort of patient data?
Great. Let's again getting into some little more details. I will count out 3 or 4 major things, and a lot of things flow from there. The first is, I talked earlier about designing with security in mind, right? Mm-hmm. So when you are designing AI system or an AI application, it could be a chatbot, it could be analytics system, it could be anything that uses AI. You need to have security in mind when the design takes place. You maybe need to make sure that if you're using an LLM, that is suitably isolated. The LLM itself is what you could call immutable. That means you should not be able to go and change the parameters of the LLM from the application so that it becomes more reliable, right? So designing with security in mind, putting the right guardrails at the application design level itself is one major thing that you need to take. So that's one big thing. The second big thing is all the standard hygiene, which we have learned over the last number of years about cybersecurity, in any case needs to be in place. Just because I'm designing for AI doesn't mean that goes away. What I mean by that is that the AI system finally will rest on a platform which is, on some infrastructure. It will be connected together by networks. It will be used by people. It will be, so all of the measures of cybersecurity that go into play to protect the networks, to protect the data, to protect against misuse, to have the identities in place, to have the right integrations, secure integrations, all of that needs to as it is coming. So the first thing I talked about was secure design. The second thing is the underlying, making sure all the standard cybersecurity controls are in place. And the third big thing is to make sure that we are able to cater for AI specific, if I can say, issues likely to come or risks that are likely to come up, right? Like I'll give an example. If I am, there is one of the things we talk about as a risk from AI is excessive agency. And I'm just picking out of random. I don't say it's the biggest thing. What excessive agency will mean is that if I take an output from AI and without checking it, directly use it to create some action, I might give it excessive agency. In an healthcare, that could be very damaging. It could be critical. It could impact safety of a patient directly, right? So we need to have the checks and balances. If you remember, I talked about at one point. That's one. Well, that could be one thing. Other thing we talk about is to make sure that the inputs that people are giving, if it's a chatbot or if it's something that is taking a user input, I'm able to suitably look at the inputs, and we would call that what is called prompt injection. So there is a set of attacks against AI which is called prompt injection attacks. So if you are able to suitably modify the language or the way that you give the input to an AI chatbot, you could potentially impact the output that it gives, right? It could give an insecure output. So you need to make sure that anywhere there is a user interface, etc., I cater for measures against, the kind of, inputs that a user could give. I put some boundaries and, like I said, guardrails on that. Third thing I talked about earlier was making sure that the output that comes in, I'm able to scrub that, make sure that I'm doing some validation and checks against it. I shouldn't have over-reliance on AI. That's one part of it. Now, these are all things that look trivial, but there are controls that will come in place. I need to make sure the supply chain validation or the vulnerabilities from the supply chain are catered for. So the source of the LLM, how it was trained, that again is one thing which becomes very important. I need to make sure that the data that is fed in, I have the right level of access being built in to that application from a people perspective, that who can access that data or who can access the output of that AI based on what is the data it was trained on. So if the data was sensitive, then only certain class of people I should have the least privileged access taking place for the output. So I'm just trying to say there is a set of measures that would come in addition to the first two that I talked about. I hope that answers your question.
No, that was great. I was just to build on that a little bit. Are there emerging technologies or methodologies that are starting to come out that in addition to these sort of safeguards, or is that where we're at right now?
So I still remember about 15 years back, and pardon me, I'm sounding maybe quite aged here, but the point is when applications and packaged applications came out, and I remember the time when a lot of Java code was being made, that's the time we came out with, initially, the security was more manual in nature, right? So you said that I will be able to put processes in place, I will have people looking at it and people doing things and all that. And gradually you had more and more tools coming in to do what those people did. And that's what we are seeing now in AI. You have a lot of tools coming in which will be able to, let's take scan an AI application or do the analysis and be able to make sure that it is trustworthy, right? Or look at like I talked earlier about making sure that the output is within the ranges that you are expecting and it is not corrupted. The output is not faulty. So those kind of things you would have, we already have AIs that are being trained to do that kind of output monitoring. So I'm just saying, as we go forward, you're going to have more and more tools that come in to make sure that the security or the cybersecurity of AI-based applications is provided. The other thing which is happening and which we haven't touched on too much is how AI is going to be used to improve cybersecurity itself. So there is a whole class of solutions that are, how do I exploit LLMs and GenAI and other such things to improve cybersecurity itself. So there is a whole class of tools that are going to do what they did earlier, but better, right? So detect threats better, respond to threats better, analyze threats better, to be able to give the people who are sitting on systems a better or a faster analysis of what all threats you see, be able to crunch more data to be able to do that analysis for them, right? So these are things that are already started. We're seeing that cybersecurity started becoming more effective in terms of the tools that we're able to deploy because they started using more AI in the cybersecurity tools themselves.
Wow. It's fascinating. It's been a fascinating discussion all around. Thank you so much. And as we reflect on our time together today, what do you see as the most critical takeaway for healthcare leaders striving to enhance their cybersecurity resilience in this Gen AI era?
Right. If I were to kind of summarize 2 or 3 quick things, the first is AI is not God. It is not something which is, and it's not the panacea for all ills, right? Mm-hmm. And it is not a black box which you can't understand. And AI is a new technology. And like all new technology, initially you don't know enough, but you need to be able to bring your logic and your past learnings to be able to understand how it can be best utilized and protected and what are the risks associated with it. So that's one thing. So don't look at it as, oh, this is AI and I just need to leave it alone. I need to put it through the same rigor with which I have put all previous technologies, right? That's one thing. The second is what I spoke about earlier. You need to involve cybersecurity, or you need to put cybersecurity in at the inception. It is not a bolt-on that can be done later. Oh, let's get cybersecurity in now, right? Or let's secure this now. It has to be, cybersecurity is something that will have to be thought of from the design onwards. Otherwise, you will come up with system which has got gaps and holes, and you keep trying to fix holes as we go along down the way. That's some second major thing. The third major thing is, we need to be, operating better for our patients, be more, give them better care, be faster in that, be more, safe in doing that also. And therefore, we owe it to them to make the right choices and investments to make sure that that is not something which someone can disrupt, right? So this is something where we will need to put investment in, and healthcare leaders, while they're aware, yes, we need to make the provisions for this investment in our budget so that we are able to look after the welfare of our consumers, which is most important.
Right. Absolutely. Vipin, thank you so much for bringing your expertise to the show today. It's been a really fascinating conversation and really great learning from you and hearing about the future of cybersecurity and healthcare technology. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren. And it's been it's a real pleasure speaking to you and kind of discussing all of this. And some of it might have been a little more theoretical, but these are areas and principles on which we need to move forward. So I hope it all goes well.
Absolutely. Very important topic. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
The Shaping Healthcare podcast is brought to you by CitiusTech, a leader in healthcare consulting and IT services. To find out more about CitiusTech, visit CitiusTech.com. To listen to more interesting insights on healthcare technology and innovations, search and subscribe to the Shaping Healthcare podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want to share any feedback or would like to be featured in our podcast, do write to us at citiusvision@citiustech.com.